This short video has been made by Oxfam Lymington to explain how to describe the main types of collectible books that we offer for sale online using the Oxfam listing tool. The books are described using their features and their conditions, their date of publication, and sometimes a brief summary of the contents with an explanation of where the information has come from. There are certain descriptive terms that crop up frequently, as there are a number of features which are fairly common in older collectible books. These include foxing, which is brown spots on pages or page edges, tanning, which is more even brown toning to pages due to age, and bumping, where the edge is damaged or turned over. There's a comprehensive glossary of book terms on abbooks.co.uk and also complete guides to book sizes, book conditions and binding terms. You can also do an internet search for any of these aspects to find other guides to terminology. You need to describe the features of the book as accurately as you can, but always try and be positive too and emphasise the good points. Do keep the value in perspective. A book worth £100 will need a more careful and detailed description than one worth £15. This is a rare first edition from 1961, which is also signed by the author on the fly title page. It's got beige cloth hardcovers with orange titles on the spine and on the front, and an orange cavalier. The boards are clean and unworn, with just a very small bump at the top right corner of the front. The spine is shelf-cocked, which is the term used when it has a lean forwards or backwards, and this is due to poor storage on a shelf. There are no inscriptions at all in this book, and the binding is tight. It's very clean. The book has a dust jacket which hasn't been price clipped, so it hasn't been cut off at the corner there. It does have some light edge wear along the top and the bottom, and it's got a couple of short tears here on the top edge which need to be mentioned. The spine and the top edge there are tanned but not faded. I would just add that this is a collectible children's book written by a popular and prolific author, and is the story of a young girl at the time of the English Civil War. And you can take this kind of information from the book summary and from the biographical information on the inner folds of the dust jacket. This is a fairly typical collectible book, first edition from 1936. The publication date 1936 is shown on the title page, and we know it's a first edition because on the reverse of the title page there aren't any other publication dates. It's in very good condition, a hardback with beige cloth hardcovers, brown titles on the spine, and on the front are a sphinx and a facsimile author signature. The boards are very good, with just one small watermark on the front near the spine, but the spine is a little discoloured compared to the boards. It has been sunned. The spine also is bumped at the base and at the top, and bumped means it's a little worn and bent over. The book is signed by the author on the first free-end paper. The foredge and the lower edge are untrimmed or uncut, which is quite common in some of these older books. It means the page edges are not even, and the actual edge there is quite rough in places. The pages are lightly age-tanned, particularly around the margins. And this is particularly noticeable on the second page, which has actually been stuck in after printing. This book has a chapter about King Edward VIII, and this extra page is a note about his abdication. The binding in general is very tight and firm, and there are no inscriptions at all. It has a frontispiece and 16 other black and white plates, and it contains a series of short biographies of notable people from various walks of life. This book is dated 1909, as you can see from the title page, but it's the third issue, and you can see that from the list on the reverse of the title page. It's got maroon cloth hardcovers with gilt titles on the front and on the spine, and it's got a blind stamp decoration on the front which goes around the gilt titles. It's called blind stamping because it's being pressed into the board but not coloured in any way. The boards have got light edge and corner wear, and the lower corner on the rear board is bumped. The spine is very lightly faded compared to the boards, and is also bumped at the top and at the base. The top edge of the text block is gilt. Inside there are maroon paste downs and first and last end papers, and after careful inspection these do seem to be replacements. They're very good condition, far too good condition for the age of the book, and they're very slightly misplaced, having a wider margin at the bottom than they've got at the top. This replacement will actually devalue the book slightly, so do always look for repairs like this, even if they've been done very well. The text pages are very lightly tanned. There are no inscriptions and the binding is tight. At the end of the book is a 50-page list of works dated October 1911. I'm unfamiliar with this book. I don't know what the contents are about, and there's no summary of the contents in the introduction. So I looked through the descriptions of other booksellers, and I also looked on some review websites of this book, and that also can provide useful information about the contents. This book has a few features not seen in the previous examples. It has bright blue cloth hardcovers with extensive blind stamping on the front and black titles on the spine. There's some foxing on the page edges and also on the end papers, particularly at the end of the text block. There's a crack in the binding at pages 24-25. Dust jackets for this edition are extremely rare, so it does add value. However, this dust jacket isn't in a particularly good condition, as it has quite a lot of edge wear and chipping where small pieces are missing. There's also a number of tears, particularly at the folds. It does have one interesting feature, which is an original reduced sticker at the base of the spine, where the original 2 shillings has been reduced by 50% to 1 shilling. The book doesn't have a date of publication printed anywhere, but from looking at other descriptions from other booksellers, It seems to be about 1924. And where a book is undated, you can often use original gift or owner inscriptions to estimate the date of publication, or you can search online for biographical information on the author, which sometimes includes a list of published works and their dates. Because the dust jacket on this book is fairly fragile, it will be stored in a protected cover. This is another book in a fragile condition, so again we'll store it in this protected cover. It's a fairly early Jane Austen novel, undated, but again from looking online for the same or similar edition you can get a rough idea of the date of publication. In this case it's around 1900. When a book has the spine and corners bound in a different way from the boards, it's described as half bound. So this example is half bound with brown calf spine and corners and marbled boards. The calf leather on books of this age is often in this condition, dry and scuffed, with cracked hinges. Sometimes the hinges have failed completely and the boards are detached. In this example, the front hinge is cracked externally, but the board is held in place by the end papers. The marbled boards have darkened and the end papers are foxed. There is a substantial crack in the binding where a section of text is partially detached. Where a book has just the spine bound in a different material to the boards but not the corners, it's described as quarter bound. This book has its original smooth calf binding, which now has some edge and corner wear. There's also wear at the top and base of the spine and on the raised bands on the spine. And these raised bands are a fairly typical feature of these older calf-bound books, as are the gilt titles on the contrasting colour panel which has been stuck onto the spine. Both boards are blind stamped with decoration, and also blind stamped are the turn-ins, which is the part of the binding which has been turned in onto the inside. And the front has a gilt crest. Considering its age, this book was published in 1880, so it's now about 140 years old. These covers are in very good condition with no cracking of the hinges. The page edges are red. The end papers are marbled, and on the front paste down is a nameplate dated 1897, and the name on it appears to be that of an old Irish family from County Cork. The pages at the beginning and end of the text block adjacent to the marbled end papers are foxed. There are just a couple of things to mention about the text block. The first is that one of the leaves is partially detached and it protrudes slightly, just about 1 millimetre, from the text block. So you need to mention that in the description. And the second thing to mention is that one of the pull-out maps has a tanned edge, where that edge was previously protruding from the text block and was exposed to the daylight. Apart from a brief description of the contents, I would also mention that the book has 31 plates, lots of illustrations in the text and 8 maps. This book is called The Poetical Works of William Wordsworth. The first thing to note is that the full title doesn't appear on the outside. On the front you've just got the surname, and on the spine you've got the poetical works of Wordsworth without his forename. So the full title only appears on the inside, and it's on both the fly title page and on the main title page. So always make sure you've got the correct title for the book by looking inside. You don't need to mention it in the description, but you do need to have the correct title at the head of the listing. The leather binding on this book is a Morocco style maroon. Morocco is a cheaper and more textured leather than calf. This book has flexible card covers, and on the top of the front there is a crease across the corner. The spine is lightly sunned and it's scuffed with bumping and wear to the top and the base. The page edges are a reddish gilt all round, and they too are rounded at the corners. Inside, the end papers are a maroon with a detailed gilt floral pattern, and on the rear paste down there is a small amount of wrinkling just across the corner. There's an owner name and date of 1914 on the fly title page, but no other inscriptions or marking in the text. The 986 pages are printed on fine India paper, so there's an awful lot of text in a fairly small and lightweight book. There's a frontispiece of the poet, and the text is printed in double columns. This paperback is a scarce book, a first edition from 1968. I found only one other one in the UK, plus a couple in the USA. It has the original card covers with the front in blue and gold. The titles are in English on the front and in Arabic on the rear cover. The covers have a little edge wear and a small crease across the top right corner of the front. There are also a couple of short tears at the base and at the top of the front hinge. The spine and rear cover have some surface grubbiness from handling and usage. The binding is tight. There are no inscriptions, and importantly for a language learning book, none of the 10 lessons have been attempted. As this is a book for learning Arabic, the lessons begin at the rear and work forwards towards the front, as is standard in any Arabic text. This is a fairly modern hardback book with an ISBN, but one that wasn't found by the Oxfam listing tool, so we have to supply the description ourselves. It's an American title and extremely scarce here. I didn't find any others for sale in the UK. It's actually in fine condition, so there's little to say about its condition. For a description, I'd just praise the excellent information on the front inner fold of the dust jacket, and also mention that it's packed full of glossy colour illustrations. Finally, this is a modern paperback novel for children, self-published by the author and dedicated and signed by her. It does have an ISBN, but it was unfound by the system. It's scarce. I found only about 5 others online, none of which appear to be signed, and the prices for which start at about £45, so this is definitely worth listing. It's in fine condition, so the description is taken from the summary on the back cover. with the addition that the book is part 2 of a trilogy.